What's going on, guys? My name is Simzel, and Spider-Man Brand New Day is finally out in cinemas and everyone is going absolutely crazy over it, including myself. I've had a few days to sit with this film and collect my thoughts, and honestly, I absolutely loved it. In fact, it jumped straight into my top 3 Spider-Man films of all time, sitting right behind Tobey Maguire's first and second movies. So let's waste no time and get into my spoiler thoughts for this film. This movie is everything I wanted it to be, and maybe even more. Destined Daniel Cretton coming in to direct this one was a masterstroke because he brought this fresh, raw energy to Tom Holland's Spider-Man. And watching Tom in the suit this time round, I just sat there thinking, yes, he is Spider-Man. Now, I do love the John Watts trilogy. Homecoming and No Way Home are brilliant. But after seeing Brand New Day, it is clearly night and day. This film understands Peter Parker on a much deeper level than those first 3 movies ever did. So we pick up 4 years after No Way Home. Peter Parker is completely alone and everyone has forgotten about him. His girlfriend and his best friend have moved on and have no memory of him. And he's basically given up on having a normal life. He's completely abandoned Peter Parker to solely focus on being Spider-Man. And this movie shows us this through an epic montage of him cleaning up the streets. I don't know what it is, but seeing Spider-Man just take down simple everyday thugs is just so cool to me. It's a staple of the character that I just love. We get these awesome quick battles with classic comic villains like Boomerang, Tarantula, and even a heavily long-awaited return of Matt Gargan's Scorpion. We even get a quick Tombstone appearance that perfectly recreates the iconic cover of Lonnie holding Spider-Man in the air. I just wish we got more of him, man. But what really grounds this film is its focus on the characters, especially Peter Parker. I really liked how much of it is focused on how lonely and sad Peter is. He's actively shutting out the world. He even ditches his apartment the second a neighbour notices him and realises that they live on the same floor. He doesn't want to be with anybody in this one. Instead, his only friend is a new built-in suit AI. But unlike the Karen AI in Homecoming, which just felt like a high-tech Stark gadget, this AI serves a really tragic narrative purpose. It's there to show just how isolated Peter has become. The only thing that Peter even talks to is completely artificial, and it only benefits his superhero life, not his human one. Because he's completely neglecting his human life, Peter's trauma starts causing his arachnid DNA to mutate and take over. His powers are dialed all the way up, and it's a beautiful flip on Spider-Man 2. In which Tobey's Peter lost his powers because he just wants to be Peter Parker. However, here Tom's losing his humanity because he only wants to be Spider-Man. And yes, seeing him freak out over developing organic webs while explicitly referencing Peter 2 from No Way Home was such a great moment. But speaking of characters, I have to talk about Ned and MJ. Now, when it was announced that they were returning for Brand New Day, I was a little skeptical. I was worried that their involvement would ruin the impact of the ending in No Way Home. But thankfully they managed to pull it off and really show just how much Ned and MJ have moved on without Peter in their lives. They've gone off to college and made a whole new life for themselves, all while Peter watches from afar. And so when they return to New York, Peter gets to see just how much they've changed from the people that he used to know. MJ has a boyfriend now, and Ned has a ton of new friends. Peter's place in their lives has become pretty much obsolete, and there's no way for him to rebuild those connections with them. This becomes even more apparent when we get to see a scene of Peter and MJ, where she reads the letter he wrote for her, and she straight up tells him that whatever spell that he cast, it worked. She doesn't remember Peter Parker at all, and therefore she doesn't love him. Peter really waited 4 years just for MJ to tell him that she doesn't love him. Real brutal stuff, and I absolutely love to see it. I'm really glad they didn't undo the spell so quickly. I got a little nervous when they kissed and it seemed like she remembered who he was, but thankfully it was just a ruse caused to toy with Peter. Because I really like how the message of this film is that sometimes people you love do move on, and you just have to accept that and learn to move on for yourself. With the memories of those people, but allowing yourself to be open to something new. So it'll be really interesting to see where Peter goes in the next film. Will he meet a Gwen Stacy or a Felicia Hardy? Or will he slowly rebuild the relationships between Ned, Peter and MJ? As much as I would love to see a Gwen or a Black Cat, I do think that over the next 2 films, they are going to be rebuilding the relationships with Ned and MJ and make him have to earn it all over again. And honestly, I'm okay with that. One of my main complaints about the Peter and MJ relationship in the previous trilogy was how quick and unearned it felt. Peter developed his crush on MJ pretty much off screen before Far From Home, so we never got to see the natural progression of that dynamic. But in these next lot of movies, we can get that, especially if they keep this more mature and grown up tone for Spider-Man. Now, let's talk about the other heroes that appear in this film, because yes, it wouldn't be an MCU Spider-Man movie without some other Marvel characters showing up and sharing the screen. Another huge positive for Brand New Day is how they balance out the other heroes that do show up. Now, when Marvel announced that this film would juggle Frank Castle, Bruce Banner, and Yelena, I was a bit worried. The Punisher is way darker and more R-rated than Spider-Man. But the way Destin handles these guest stars was pretty great. They don't overshadow Spider-Man, they just make New York feel like a living, breathing world. And it feels just like a comic book. Like Yelena's appearance, for example. She was a rumoured character that would show up, and at first you'd wonder how on earth would that even fit in or make sense. But when you see the film, it really does. Spider-Man knows her and she knows of him. They probably interacted a bunch in the past few years, so he knows where to go to get information or leads regarding his villains or investigations. Yelena doesn't have a lot of scenes in this film, she only really has 2, but her involvement does push the story forward, since she is the one who discovers that the mysterious character played by Sadie Sink is Jean Grey. And she also helps Peter see that he is miserable and sad being alone all the time. The whole bathhouse joke was a little odd to me on first watch, but I can look past that as simple Marvel humour to keep the film from being a total depression fest. It's just funny to me how Yelena considers Spider-Man's work small potato stuff, when he's literally dealing with a highly powerful mutant in Jean Grey and a savage Hulk. Now, let's talk about my favourite addition in this film, Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. He and Spider-Man have completely opposing morals, which makes their dynamic incredible. Frank literally starts this movie wanting to kill Spider-Man for interfering with his business, and because he's so annoying. But as the story goes on, you get to see the impact that Spider-Man has on Frank. When Peter gets shot later in the film, Frank completely panics and rushes him to a hospital and ends up calling him one of his closest allies. I really like how they didn't change Frank just to fit him into this PG-13 movie. He really feels like the exact same Punisher we'd see in the shows, except now he's not in an R-rated environment. He still has that relentless and cynical personality, and it works really well against Spider-Man's optimistic and youthful energy. And the real-life friendship between Tom Holland and Jon Bernthal just shines through their chemistry on screen. It's a duo I never knew I needed, and since it's the first time we've gotten a Netflix-era character make their debut in the movies, I really hope this is a sign we could get to see Daredevil show up at some point, hopefully in Spider-Man 5. Because seeing all 3 of these guys interact and bicker would be so fun. And finally, we get to see Mark Ruffalo return as Bruce Banner. Peter goes to him for help with his mutating DNA, but things go sideways, because for the first time since Infinity War, we finally get the return of Savage Hulk. Finally! Seeing Spider-Man fight a raging Hulk inside the damage control building was easily one of the best sequences in the entire movie. Hulk has the power, but Spider-Man has the speed, darting around him until he finally manages to get through to Banner's mind. Now, as much as I love the inclusion of the Hulk, I do think he was slightly underused. Conceptually, it's brilliant. Both Peter and Bruce are fighting the exact same battle, trying to control their more violent and aggressive sides, as their monstrous halves try to become more dominant. And so because of that connection, I really assumed that Banner would play a much bigger role in the actual story. But here is my biggest gripe. The marketing completely spoiled it. Sony and Marvel pretty much used every single shot of Banner in the trailers and the TV spots. I kept waiting for like a hidden surprise or a secret second act with him, but there just wasn't one. Now, don't get me wrong, I am super happy with the performance that we got. Mark Ruffalo acts out the absolute agony of Banner trying to repress his transformation perfectly. It just slightly ruined the excitement because there was no surprises left. They should have kept Hulk completely out the marketing and let that entire office building fight scene be exclusive for the film itself. Nonetheless, I'm just happy that Prime Savage Hulk is back. He has been heavily underutilized in the MCU lately, and I really hope we get more of him in the future, even if his future in the MCU feels a little uncertain right now. And now we have to talk about that big character reveal. Sadie Sink is officially playing Jean Grey in the MCU. Look, you knew it, I knew it, we all knew it. It was easily one of the worst kept Marvel secrets in recent history, but seeing it actually happen? Unbelievable. We officially have our first major X-Men casting integrated into the main MCU timeline. What's really fascinating about her inclusion is that she actually takes on a more antagonistic role here, as she's trying to locate her sister who has been taken and experimented on by damage control. Throughout the film, we see Jean possessing the bodies of many different people, trying to locate something called VMAX. What is VMAX? We don't know, Spider-Man doesn't know, and even Damage Control don't know. Spider-Man is kept in the dark regarding Damage Control's shady experiments, so he sees Jean as the threat, and you can't really blame him. She threatens MJ, possesses her, and makes out with Peter, letting him believe that the old MJ has come back to him. Not really a great look for Jean there, I can't lie. However, he soon learns that no, Jean isn't the actual bad guy in this situation, but it's actually Damage Control and their director, William Metzger, as we find out that VMAX is nothing more than the name written on the air vent in the holding cell where his sister Sarah was being held captive. Jean learns that her sister was killed by Metzger, which causes her telepathy abilities to further develop, and she becomes even more powerful, taking control of a wide portion of New York and holding everyone inside in a frozen state. Now, Spider-Man tries to get through to Jean before she does anything she'll regret, but then she takes control of some hand assassins, and then we get our third act fight sequence. I was quite surprised to find out that this fight between Spider-Man and the Hand was the actual finale of the film. This sequence was all over the trailers and the TV spots. Yet again, another case of them revealing and showing off too much. All of the huge wow moments of the fight were in the marketing, even the ending was in the marketing. So the shock and wonder of seeing Peter go hand to hand and use his organic webs to create a web blossom to trap the assassins, it wasn't as huge as it could have been if we hadn't seen it all in the trailers. But aside from that, it was a really great sequence. I'm really happy that it wasn't this huge grand set piece like it was in the second or third movie. It was contained and focused, which really made it feel more authentic, allowing us to see Peter's hand-to-hand fighting styles up close, without him overly relying on his swinging or his big jumps. It kinda reminded me of the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man film, and that final battle in the abandoned building. It didn't rely too much on the spectacle, but more so on Peter trying to survive the Hand's attacks from every angle. And I love how Peter comes to the understanding that he doesn't have to choose between Spider-Man or Peter Parker. He's ultimately both. And we get to see Jean go into Peter's mind as we get to see a flashback to the homecoming days when Aunt May found out that he was Spider-Man. We get to see May and Peter have a conversation where she tells him that being Spider-Man is great and all, but he needs to understand that by being Peter Parker, that's what makes him who he is, and people will love him for that reason, not because of the powers or the mask. But what I love the most about this is that it's not just Peter who takes something away from this message, but it's also Jean. May's message of not being afraid and to allow people in who will love her for who she really is. It makes her realise that she doesn't have to do this completely alone. There will always be someone who she can lean on, and in this moment it's Peter. They've both lost people, and in this moment they can rely on one another and let each other in. Peter even takes a bullet for her after Punisher tries to clip Jean to release all the people under her control, so she realises that not everyone in the world is out to get her. Peter's then taken to a hospital by Frank, and we get to see just how much of an impact Spider-Man has had on the people of New York. That scene of Peter standing amongst the crowds of fans, cheering and clapping for Spider-Man, for their hero, it was such a heartwarming moment for Peter, as he's able to witness just how much his work over the 4 years has paid off. It's like they say, when Peter Parker loses, Spider-Man wins. Even if Peter's been forgotten, Spider-Man is appreciated, and on a deep level, he isn't alone as he once thought. The people of New York are behind him. Even Frank is. He even wears the Spider-Man mask in the hospital room, waving and grunting to the crowds. And Peter ends the film with a newfound hope that despite his old life with MJ coming to a close, he's now at a point where he can start a new chapter and move forward. He's even seen with a coffee cup, similar to the one that he kept MJ's letter in, whether this time it's not empty, it's full, as he takes a sip of the coffee inside, symbolising that he isn't holding on to the past anymore, and he's allowing himself to keep going, and he's opening himself up to new experiences. And we see Peter enter a deli where he always buys flowers from May's grave, when he spots Ned sitting inside. He plucks up the courage to go over to him and introduce him properly this time, not hiding behind some fake name like Maynard, but as Peter. Ned recognizes him from the housewarming party, and Peter proceeds to do their old handshake, to which Ned is able to memorize it, slowly sparking some kind of memory, as he looks up to Peter and says his name as if he remembers him, as if he's beginning to remember his old friend after all these years. Peter smiles, and we end the film. I've explained what I think this means, and if Ned is actually remembering Peter from when they were in high school. I don't think that's the case. I like to believe that it's Ned putting the pieces together, because earlier in the film, MJ directly calls out to Spider-Man, using his real name, and we get to see Ned's reaction to Spider-Man being called Peter. And they lingered on Ned's reaction for a few seconds, which makes me believe that in this ending scene, Ned's more realising that the guy standing in front of him is actually Spider-Man. The guy who's been looking out for him all these years. He's now able to finally put a name and face to the mask. and this could be the starting point for a new beginning in their friendship. But we won't really know the true meaning of the scene and its implications for the future Spider-Man films until we eventually get Spider-Man 5. Also, I do want to quickly mention that I really love how Peter only has one suit in this film. Usually in the previous Tom Holland movies, he'd have like 2 or 3 alternate costumes spread throughout that would have no real relevance to the story, but with the sole purpose of selling toys and merchandise. But here, Peter only wears the one suit, and it's such a small thing, but I'm really glad to see it. It finally allows Tom's Peter to have a distinct and memorable look for his Spider-Man, and the red and blue costume we get is a really phenomenal look for the character. It's easily top 3 live action suits, and may even be number 1. Overall, I really enjoyed Spider-Man Brand New Day. It exceeded my expectations, and managed to pull off such an emotional and compelling story about Peter Parker who's isolating himself, and struggling to move on from his girlfriend and his best friend who have completely forgotten all about him and have already made new lives for themselves. It's such a really great idea for a Spider-Man film, and it really hits close to home for people my age who may be facing similar issues as Peter, trying to move on from a previous point in your life that you really loved. And I'm really happy to say that they succeeded in achieving that, and they may have created the best Tom Holland Spider-Man movie to date. But what do you think? Did you love Brand New Day as much as I did? Did you not? Let me know all your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know it's taken a while to make this video, but better late than never. But with that being said, I've been Simzel. Take care, and I will see you all in the next one.